Hey, it's Kunal, commercial product photographer, and today I'll take you behind the scenes of this beautiful beer shot of Cruz Campo, which is a brewery here in Spain. And I'll talk about the styling process of beer, the lighting setup, the camera gear I've used here, the art direction, and all the challenges that popped up during the shoot. So let's get started. Alright, so as a viewer, when I look at this photo on a hot sunny day, my first reaction should be, I want to taste this Spanish beer right now. That's the kind of reaction I want to create in my viewers when they look at this photo. And to understand this, let's compare product photography with some other genres like weddings or fashion photography or portraits. So, when you're shooting people, let's say you shoot a model smiling or you capture a photo of the bride having tears in her eyes, you can immediately convey those emotions to the viewers. But what do you do when you're shooting inanimate products like a beer bottle? So in this case, my intent or the goal is to focus on the details because attention to detail is the key when it comes to creating high-end photos for ad campaigns. So for a moment, if you look at this photo, you see all those condensation drops, you see the ice slush on the bottle, you see the fizz rising up in the glass towards the nicely rounded beer head. Everything seems very refreshing, as if the beer is freshly poured, and I can almost, hear the fizz, I can almost smell the beer, and my taste buds are coming alive. So that's the kind of emotion I want to create in the viewers when they look at this photo. Now, again, to understand these details, let's have a look at the detailed crops. So right here, when you see at this detailed section, observe how the condensation droplets are of different sizes, right? And this is very intentional. I very deliberately kept it this way because I want to make it look as real as possible. And again, if you see how the ice slush is placed very carefully on certain sections, so that A, it is not covering any text and the branding is clearly readable, and B, it is looking beautiful from the camera angle, right? So that's the intent here. And also if you observe, I'm using a very shallow depth of field here. So in fact, let's go back to the original photo. And here if you see, the stem of the glass is out of focus right here. This is out of focus, and so is the case with the edges of the glass and the edges of the bottle. The edges are slowly going out of focus, and that is very intentional. And also if you look at the overall lighting, this is a part of my style where I tend to use a shallow depth of field and I try to mix up hard and soft light together. So if you look here, the right edge of the bottle has a very harsh highlight, but the highlight on the left is very soft and beautifully defined. So that's the way I tend to shoot products. Again, because my goal is to make the products or the drinks that I'm shooting very realistic, it should look very organic and very authentic. So in fact, this is how we as humans we perceive products around us. I mean, let's say if you hold any product close enough to your eyes, you will notice that the background is out of focus. In your peripheral vision, you can see that the background is immediately out of focus and all your focus is fixed on the product. And also when you look at products in real life, you have most of the times we have these harsh light sources around the product. So I try to inculcate these things into my product shoots to make things look very realistic and very organic. Okay, so let's go back to the detailed crops here. And again, if you look at the close-up of this glass, you see the fizz, the bubbles rising up towards the beer head. You see a lot of details in the bubbles right here in the head. And also the beer head, the shape of the beer head is very realistic. I have done nothing. I mean, I have shot everything in camera. I've done nothing in post. So this is how it was during the shoot. We styled it this way to capture the authenticity. Immediately you will, if you look at this, you start feeling start hearing the fizz that is rising towards the beer head, right? So that's the goal. And if you look at the label, I forgot to mention one thing. So let's go back and look at the entire shot again. If you look carefully, I'm shooting the product in a way that the camera is looking up at the bottle. So if the bottle is here, the camera is right here and it is looking up at the bottle, okay? When doing so, I have focused on the label, and if you look carefully, all the labels on the bottle and the glass are completely in focus and the edges are gradually going out of focus. Now, from the angle that I'm shooting from, this is possible only when you are using a tilt shift or a perspective control lens, where I have tilted the lens to make the focal plane parallel to the labels, okay? Because I want the labels to be tack sharp, completely readable, and I want only the edges to go out of focus, right? And the aperture I'm using here is f2.8 and the lens is 85 PCE or tilt shift lens, okay? Now, again, this is another crop and this is the top section of the beer, and if you look carefully here, you will see a drop trail right here, okay? Now again, this drop trail is very intentional. I plan about all these details prior to the shoot and nothing happens by chance on the set, okay? So this drop trail, I wanted to create a trail right here at this position, and I did that by simply when I'm using the condensation droplets, when I'm spraying these drops on the bottle, I'll use a dropper and keep placing drops at a specific position until it becomes so heavy that it slides down, okay? So that's how I get these drop trays, and I'm very clear where exactly I want it. So that's the result in front of you. And again, if you look at the ice slush, it is placed very carefully on certain sections, and to me it's very clear that which part on the bottle would be in focus. So I would very carefully place certain ice specks on those positions because I know that those will be in focus, and I very intentionally place the other ice on the edges which I know will be going out of focus. Okay, so everything is very well thought of prior to the shoot, right? Okay, so now let's look at the styling part. Now when it comes to styling in terms of beer photography, the very first thing I do is I create multiple coats on the bottle, and I'm using a clear coat here. So I would do the first coat and wait for 30 to 45 minutes, let it dry. Again do second coat, wait for a couple of minutes, and then do the third coat and then leave the bottles overnight to dry. And the reason I do this is because it has two main benefits. The first is that most of the beer bottles have paper label, and if you just simply put condensation drops on the bottle, the paper will absorb all the water and it will go bad very quickly, right? And so when you have these three layers of clear coat on top of the paper label, then that is no more an issue, right? The second benefit is that once you have these coatings on the beer bottle, the surface becomes a little rough, which is good when you are placing the ice slush or condensation drops, so that everything stays on the at a specific position that you place them on. So because of these two benefits, I use a clear coat spray, and once this is done, then I can start putting up the condensation drops and the ice slush. So in this video right here, you see me putting the ice slush at very specific positions on the bottle. And I mean, although this is a time lapse, so you see it happening very quickly, but in real life, I'm doing it very slowly, very precisely. It's a very methodical process. It takes time. And once the beer is styled, I would then put it back on the set and take a couple of shots to see it from the camera angle. Because might be from the camera angle, this particular styling is not looking good. So then I would make some changes to make sure that we have everything in the exact position that we want from the camera angle, right? So in fact, if you look at this particular BTS right here, I am changing the position of certain eye specks on the neck because I was not happy with it during the shoot. And this is a pretty standard process. So you style the product, you put it in the set, take a couple of shots and see if it's working or not, and then change the styling accordingly, right? Now let's look at how I create these beer heads. So, of course, I mean, the very first way to create a beer head is to simply pour beer in the glass, which I'm doing right here, and see how the beer head turns up. And maybe I can use a chopstick to stir it a bit and try and create a perfectly rounded head right in camera. Okay, and this is one way. Another way is, which is my preferred way, is to use a wooden chopstick. Wooden chopsticks have a certain enzyme which reacts with the beer, and it will create a beautiful beer head, and it will activate the beer basically. So you will see a lot of fizz and beer froth coming back to life again. And that's good because when you're shooting beer on set, let's say you have poured beer in the glass, you're doing the shoot, in a couple of minutes, let's say 10-15 minutes, the beer will go dead. There will be no more fizz in the glass and the beer head will go down. And that's when I use a wooden chopstick to get the beer back to life. Okay, and the beer chopstick can work for a couple of minutes, like let's say 30 to 40 minutes it can work. But after that, if you haven't got the shot still, so in that case I would use a pump to take the beer out of the glass without moving the glass. Because whenever I'm doing a shoot like this, or in fact for most of my product shoots, I'm shooting in plates or composites, so I don't want the product to move at all during the shoot. So in order to replace the beer in the glass, I can use a regular pump out the beer and replace it with fresh beer again. Okay, and then carry on with the shoot. So that's what I do. And let's look at this part of the BTS where you actually see me holding that wooden chopstick, and here I am basically capturing just the fizz part. Okay, so since I shoot everything in plates or composites, so in this particular scene you are seeing me capturing just the fizz in the beer glass. Okay, so I am stirring it up using a wooden chopstick, which creates a nice fizz rising up towards the beer head, and I'm capturing that part only. And when it comes to the lighting setup was same for the entire shoot. So here I'm using 4 speed lights, and it's very interesting when it comes to shooting liquids. I always prefer using speed lights because of 2 main reasons. First is that definitely it has a fast flash duration. Second is the form factor. I mean, look at the form factor here. Even when I'm using the standard reflector right here, if you see a standard reflector and a grid, still the form factor is so small that I can very easily place this entire lighting setup anywhere in a complicated lighting set. That is a real big advantage of using speed lights. And I'm using 4 lights here. So one light right here, this one, is to light the beer head. Okay, so I'm using a very tight grid to have light just on the beer head. Then there is another light behind this diffusion roll, which I'm using to create a nice highlight on the left side of the bottle and the glass. There is another beer speed light right here. Okay, this one I'm using to create a flare. So I mean, let's go back and have a look at the photo. So here you can see, I'm talking about this right here on the top right corner, the flare. This flare is created by the beer flash that I'm using. And we were trying to create an environment of a nightclub, so that's how you see this flare coming from a light in the background, something like that. Okay, so that's what that particular speed light is doing in the background. And there's the 4th one on the top. And by the way, when I'm shooting products, be it anything, cosmetics or drinks or bottles, anything, I always have a top light because it always, the top light always surprises me. The things it can do with a simple modifier, like here I'm using a beauty dish with a diffusion, and in this particular case I'm using this top light to create a nice glow in the beer bottle and the beer glass, of course by using a golden card. So I'm just holding a gold card behind the bottle. I'm catching light from the top light and refracting it through the bottle and the glass. Okay, so that's how I've created the glow inside the bottle and the glass. And when it comes to the camera gear, I'm using Nikon Z9 here. I think I have another BTS for that. So there it is. So I'm using Nikon Z9 along with the 85 tilt shift lens and shooting at aperture of f2.8. So this is pretty much how I shot this particular photo. If you want to have a look at this post, it is available on my Instagram, so you can have a look there. And if you have any thoughts or questions, do drop them in the comments and I'll get back to you guys. And I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.